I was 15 when my uncle pressed 3 shillings into my palm with all the ceremony of a man tossing scraps to a dog. "Be grateful," he spat, his breath reeking of brandy and regret. "Your father left you nothing but a pretty face. Go make it worth something." The front door of Harrowmere House shut behind me like a casket lid. I stood on the steps with nothing but my mother's old travel trunk and a future I had certainly not packed for. London stared back at me, grey, cold, and smelling of wet horses and smoke. It was dusk, and already I had the look of someone who did not belong. I was walking, blindly, not sure where, not caring much, when my hem caught on an uneven cobblestone and I fell. Not a soul stopped to help. That's when I saw her. A bundle of woolen whispers, sitting like a forgotten heap near an alley mouth, her face like wrinkled parchment. She held out a hand, her voice a dry rustle. "Spare a penny for an old soul." "I only have 3, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "It's all I have in the entire world." "Then I'll trade," she said quickly, her eyes suddenly sharp. 3 advices, worth more than all the gold in the city. 1 for each coin. I thought she was mad. Of course I did. But I was colder than my pride and lonelier than my common sense. So I gave her the first shilling. Her eyes lit up as she snatched it. First advice, never regret the days of small things. I scoffed. What foolishness was that? I turned to walk away, my heart sinking at my own stupidity. "Wait," she called, her voice suddenly desperate, as if her life depended on it. "Don't go yet. You'll need the second girl, you will." Something in her voice, maybe a strange note of prophecy, made me turn back. I handed her another coin. "Never change the old for the new until you know the worth of both." I was down to 1 shilling. 1. My gut twisted with panic. I turned again, determined to leave this time. "Please, girl," she begged, her voice now a soft plea. "The third is the most precious of all. I am sure of it." I hesitated. She said softly, "Leave passion and anger for tomorrow. If it still burns then, let it." I gave her the last shilling with trembling hands, and just like that, all my money was gone. I felt I'd been thoroughly swindled by a mad crone. That first night, I slept with my trunk pressed against a wall off Borough Lane, wrapped in my father's old overcoat. Rats chattered in the dark corners. Drunkards stumbled by, their songs slurring into the night. My stomach ached from a hollowness I had never known. My pride ached worse. For 7 days I wandered. I washed my face in horse troughs and begged for crusts outside churches. I was asked once, just once, to follow a man into an alley for a shilling. I ran instead. On the 8th day, I returned to the one place that held a sliver of a good memory, Leighton's Bakery on Norbury Street. The owner, Mrs. Bramble, looked me over from head to muddy heel. Then she eyed my trunk. "You have nowhere to go," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," I answered, my voice small. "But I can scrub pans. I can sweep floors." The pay was half what I needed, but the smell of warm bread broke something inside me. I stayed, and every single time I thought of leaving that small, hot kitchen for something better, the old woman's words whispered in my mind. Never regret the days of small things. I lived by those crumbs. I bought soap. And I saved every penny I could. It was Rose, another girl from the bakery, who stole from me. Everything I had hidden under a loose floorboard in the storeroom, my savings, my mother's locket, my hope. I was ready to strike her, ready to scream and rage and run. But then I remembered. Leave passion and anger for tomorrow. So I did. I held my tongue. The next day, Rose was gone. But I was still there, still standing. And that was the day I realized I was no longer the girl with 3 coins in a trunk. I was a woman, learning the value of both. But a woman cannot live on realizations alone, and the days that followed the theft were a testament to the brutal arithmetic of poverty. Every penny I earned was already spent before it touched my palm. A little for rent on my tiny attic room, a little for a loaf of bread, and the rest for the hope that I might one day have enough to not feel the constant gnawing fear of the streets. The old woman's advice, never regret the days of small things, began to feel less like wisdom and more like a cruel joke. I was drowning in small things. It was Susanna who first planted the seed. She was another girl at the bakery, older than me, with eyes that had seen too much and a laugh that was a little too loud. While I had flour dusting my eyebrows, she always had a bit of ribbon in her hair. While my hands were chapped and raw, hers were surprisingly soft. She was kind to me, in her own cynical way. One evening, as I was counting my few coins, my face a mask of worry, she leaned against the flour sacks and watched me. "You're too beautiful to be this worried over a few shillings, Evie," she said, using the name she had given me. "Beauty doesn't pay the rent, Susanna," I replied, not looking up. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "It could." I finally met her gaze. I knew what she was suggesting, and a cold shame washed over me. I would never. "Oh, stop it," she said, not unkindly. "It's not what you think. No one is asking you to, well, you know, not at first. I know a woman. She runs a private house for gentlemen. They just want company. Someone to listen to their boring stories, a pretty face to look at across the table. It's conversation, a bit of light touching, perhaps a stolen kiss. Nothing more. Nothing you can't live with." I shook my head, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I can't." "Can't you?" she pressed, her voice softer. "Or won't you? Because your landlord won't care about your pride when he throws your trunk into the street next week. I've seen it happen." Her words followed me back to my cold little room. They echoed in the silence as I lay awake, my stomach aching with a hunger that was now mixed with terror. I had followed the advice. I had worked. I had saved. And for what? To be 1 week away from sleeping in alleys again? I looked at my reflection in the small, cracked mirror I owned. Your father left you nothing but a pretty face. Go make it worth something. My uncle's venomous words returned to me. Susanna said it was just kissing, just touching. I could live with that, couldn't I? Just for a little while, just until I was back on my feet. What was one evening of pretending, if it meant I could sleep indoors for a month? What was one kiss from a stranger, if it meant I could eat? I closed my eyes, and in the darkness, I made a deal with whatever was left of my soul. Just once. The next day, I found Susanna. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "Tell me about that woman you know." It was a strange sort of courage that propelled me forward, a counterfeit bravery stitched together from desperation and the hollow reassurances of a girl who knew no better. Susanna prepared me as if for a ball, though we both knew it was a far different sort of engagement. She laced me into a gown of deep crimson, a colour so bold it seemed to mock the pallor of my face. The fabric was of a quality I had not felt in years, yet it felt like a shroud. "There," she said, stepping back to admire her work. "A true lady of the night." I offered no reply, for the reflection that stared back at me was a stranger, a painted doll whose eyes were wide with a silent, screaming plea. The house was not in some dark alley, as I had imagined, but on a respectable street, its windows glowing with a warm, deceptive light. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of cigar smoke and expensive perfume. A severe-looking woman with a face like pinched granite led me up a carpeted staircase and to a heavy mahogany door. She did not so much as wish me good fortune. She simply opened the door and gestured for me to enter, as one might command a dog into a kennel. The parlour was richly appointed. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the gilt-framed paintings and heavy velvet curtains. A man stood by the window, his back to me, looking out into the London night. My heart, which I thought could beat no faster, found a new, frantic rhythm. This was it, the moment of my ruin. He turned slowly, and my breath caught in my throat. I had prepared myself for someone old, or slovenly, or marked by the sort of dissipation that stains a man's character. I had not prepared for him. He was tall and impeccably dressed, with a countenance that was not merely handsome, but noble. There was a weariness in his dark eyes, a profound boredom, as if the entire world were a mild disappointment to him. He said nothing. He simply watched me, his gaze analytical, cool. I knew I was meant to speak, to smile, to perform the part for which I had been costumed. But my throat was a knot of fear, and my feet felt rooted to the floor. I could do nothing but stand there, a crimson statue of shame. And then it began. A tremor in my hands, a most unwelcome betrayal of the calm I sought to project. It was a small thing at first, but it grew, spreading to my arms, my shoulders, until my entire body was shaking with a silent, violent terror. I saw his expression change. The cool detachment in his eyes softened, replaced by something I could not name. Surprise, perhaps, or even concern. He was no longer looking at the woman he had paid for. He was looking at the terrified girl inside the dress. He pushed himself away from the window, but did not move toward the bed as I had feared. Instead, he took a step away from it, creating a space of unimagined safety. He approached me slowly, as one might approach a startled fawn. I flinched as he reached out a hand, but he did not touch me, not yet. He simply stood before me, his presence filling the room, and spoke, his voice low and steady. "Child," he murmured, the word a soft note of disbelief. His hand came up, and with an agonizing gentleness, he brushed a stray curl from my cheek. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the kiss I had sold. Instead, I felt a soft, warm pressure against my forehead. It was a touch devoid of passion, yet filled with a kindness so profound, so utterly unexpected in that place, that a single tear escaped my closed eye and traced a hot path down my cheek. He had not claimed my lips. He had blessed my brow. He drew back his hand, and the warmth of his touch lingered on my skin like a phantom. The parlour, which moments before had felt like the very edge of a precipice, was now suspended in a profound and unnerving silence. He stepped back, putting a respectable distance between us, and the weariness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a look of sharp, unwavering resolve. It was the countenance of a man who had, in an instant, made a decision from which he would not be swayed. "Tell me your name," he said. His voice was not a request, but a soft command. "Evelyn," I whispered, the name feeling foreign on my own tongue. "Evelyn Hart." He gave a single decisive nod, as if my name were the final piece of a puzzle he had just solved. He looked at me then, truly looked, and for the first time since my father's death, I felt seen not for the face I possessed, but for the soul that was trembling within. "Evelyn," he repeated, testing the sound of it, "you will wait here. Do not open the door to anyone but me. Do you understand?" I could do little more than nod, my mind a maelstrom of confusion and a terrifying burgeoning hope. Hope, I had learned, was a far more dangerous thing than despair. He turned and left the room without another word, the click of the closing door echoing in the stillness. I was alone again, but everything had changed. I sank into one of the plush armchairs, my borrowed crimson gown pooling around me like blood. Had I imagined it? The gentleness in his eyes? The chaste, impossible kiss? Perhaps it was merely a crueler sort of game, a prelude to a far greater humiliation. Men of his station, I knew, were capable of casual cruelties that a common man could scarcely imagine. I waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. I listened for the coarse laughter of the madam, for footsteps of another client, but there was nothing. The fire crackled. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked on, each sound a hammer blow against the silence of my own frantic thoughts. Who was he, this stranger who had paid for my ruin only to refuse the purchase? A commotion sounded from downstairs, a sharp, authoritative male voice, followed by the indignant squawk of the madam. I held my breath, my hands clenched in the fabric of the gown. Then footsteps on the stair, firm and unhurried. They stopped outside my door. My heart leaped into my throat. The handle turned. He stood there, framed in the doorway, and in his hand he held my mother's old travel trunk, my trunk. He had not only returned for me, but for the last remnants of the life I thought I had lost forever. His eyes met mine, and any lingering fear I had dissolved under the sheer force of his calm authority. "Come," he said simply, "we are leaving." I rose on unsteady legs, my hand clutching the handle of my trunk as if it were the last solid thing in a world that had dissolved into a fever dream. I followed him from the room, my every step a silent question. He descended the grand staircase with an unhurried confidence that I could only marvel at, his back straight, his shoulders broad, a bulwark against the world that awaited us at the bottom. And await it did. The madam stood there, her arms crossed, her granite face a mask of cold fury. 2 brutish-looking men flanked her, their presence a clear and vulgar threat. She was not a woman accustomed to being defied. "Your Grace," she began, her voice dripping with a false, saccharine respect that did not quite conceal its venomous edge. "An arrangement was made. You cannot simply walk out with my property." The Duke stopped on the final step, positioning himself slightly in front of me. He looked down at her, not with anger, but with a chilling, imperious disdain that seemed to shrink her where she stood. "This young woman is not, nor has she ever been your property," he stated, his voice like chilled steel. He paused, letting the weight of his authority settle in the room. Then he delivered the blow. "She is my sister, Lady Evelyn Hart." A collective gasp seemed to be sucked from the air. The madam's eyes widened, her composure cracking to reveal the avarice and shock beneath. The Duke pressed his advantage, his voice ringing with aristocratic conviction. "She fled our family estate in the country some months ago, following a private tragedy. I have spent a fortune on private investigators searching for her. To find her here in a house of this reputation—" He let the threat hang, unspoken and utterly devastating. He then turned to me, his expression softening just enough to be convincing, though his eyes held a glint of command. "You have caused an unspeakable amount of worry, Evelyn. We are going home. Now." Before the madam could stammer out a reply, he reached into his coat and tossed a heavy purse of gold onto a nearby table. It landed with a dull, final thud. "This," he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone, "is for your trouble, and for your absolute unwavering silence on this matter. You have never seen this girl. You do not know her name. Is that understood?" The woman's eyes darted from the purse to the Duke's unyielding face. She saw not a client, but a man who could ruin her with a single word. She nodded quickly, her greed overpowering her pride. "Perfectly, Your Grace. A misunderstanding." "Indeed," he said dryly. He placed a firm hand on the small of my back, a gesture that was both protective and proprietary, and guided me toward the door. We walked past the madam and her useless guards as if they were nothing more than furniture. The cold London night air hit my face, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime I could breathe. A handsome carriage, its lacquer gleaming under the gaslights and its crest emblazoned on the door, waited for us. A footman snapped to attention, opening the door with a gloved hand. The Duke ushered me inside. I sank onto the plush leather seat, my trunk placed opposite me. He followed, and the door shut with a solid, definitive click, encasing us in the dark, intimate silence of the carriage, the sounds of the city suddenly muffled and distant. The performance was over, and we were utterly alone. The carriage lurched forward, its wheels finding a steady rhythm on the cobblestones. Inside, the silence was a living thing, thick with unspoken questions and the sheer deafening shock of my own survival. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in the lap of my crimson gown, a garish splash of colour in the opulent darkness. I dared not look at him, but I could feel his gaze upon me, steady and unreadable. My mind, a vessel tossed on a sea of consternation, could scarcely grasp the shore of this new reality. He was the first to speak. His voice, stripped of the imperious command it held in the house, was now laced with a profound weariness. "The arrangement I have made," he began, his tone measured and serious, "is for your protection. It is the only way to ensure your safety, and to erase the circumstances of our meeting." I finally found the courage to look at him. In the flickering gaslight that slipped through the windows, his face was a study in shadows and stern resolve. "I do not even know your name," I whispered, the words feeling shamefully inadequate. "It is Isaac," he said. "Isaac Sampson, Duke of Everard." A duke, of course. The title settled the last of my questions about his bearing, his wealth, his unquestionable authority. I, Evelyn Hart, a girl with 3 shillings to her name, had been rescued by one of the most powerful men in all of England. The absurdity of it was almost enough to make me laugh, or perhaps to weep. "And is Hart truly your name?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "It is, Your Grace." A flicker of something, surprise, perhaps irony, crossed his features before it was gone. Then the lie was closer to the truth than I knew. "From this moment, Miss Hart, you are who I declared you to be. Lady Evelyn Hart, my runaway sister. You will live in my home. and you will want for nothing. In return, you will follow my direction in all things. There can be no questions, no mistakes. This masquerade is your shield. Do you accept the terms?" I could only nod, my throat too tight with unshed tears to form a reply. He was offering me not just a roof over my head, but a name, a history, a shield against the world that had tried to consume me. It was a gift so immense, so undeserved, I could not comprehend it. He seemed to sense my turmoil. He let out a long, slow breath and leaned his head back against the leather, the rigid control of his posture slackening for just a moment. "This is an unconventional arrangement, I concede," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "But it is done." For the rest of the journey we said nothing. I watched the blurred lights of London pass by, the squalid alleys and gin palaces giving way to grand squares and stately homes. I had walked these streets as a beggar, invisible and afraid. Now I rode through them encased in leather and velvet, protected by a duke. The carriage slowed, turning through a set of magnificent iron gates and coming to a stop before a house so grand it seemed to block out the stars. Lights blazed from every window, a warm and golden promise. I had left one gilded cage only to find myself at the entrance of another, far grander one. But this time I could not help but wonder if the man holding the key was a saviour instead of a jailer. The carriage door swung open, revealing a tall, uniformed footman who bowed his head. The Duke exited first, then turned and offered me his hand. I stared at it for a moment, this simple, gentlemanly courtesy feeling more foreign than anything I had yet experienced. I placed my trembling fingers in his, and he helped me step down onto the pristine gravel of the drive. The house, if one could call it that, was a palace, a mountain of pale stone and glittering windows rising up into the London night. It was not merely a home, it was a declaration of power, of lineage, of a world so far removed from my own it might as well have been on another star. We entered a hall of breathtaking scale. The floor was a checkerboard of black and white marble that stretched into the distance, a grand staircase sweeping upwards into the shadows. Stern-faced portraits of the Duke's ancestors watched my progress from the walls, their painted eyes seeming to judge the scandalous crimson of my gown. A formidable silver-haired butler, who could only have been summoned by some unseen signal, stood waiting for us. His posture was perfect, his expression a mask of polite indifference, but I saw the flicker of profound surprise in his eyes as he took in my appearance. The Duke did not waste a moment on pleasantries. His voice was once again that of a man accustomed to absolute obedience. "Jennings," he said, his tone leaving no room for questions. "This is my sister, Lady Evelyn. She has been away for some time. I have just found her." The butler's face remained impassive. "I see, your grace. Welcome home, my lady." "She is exhausted," the Duke continued, his gaze sweeping over me. "She will be given the rose suite. I want a bath drawn, a meal sent up, and a dressmaker here by mid-morning. The details of her return are a private family matter and are not to be discussed." "Very good, your grace," Jennings replied with a slight bow, his discretion as flawless as his uniform. He turned and gave a subtle nod to a stern-looking woman in a severe black dress who had appeared as if from nowhere. The head housekeeper. She stepped forward and gave a small curtsy. "My lady," she said, her voice crisp and neutral, "if you would follow me." This was the handoff. The Duke looked at me one last time, his dark eyes holding a complex mixture of command and something softer, something I could not yet decipher. "Rest, Miss Hart," he said quietly, the formal address a stark reminder of the truth of our arrangement. "We will speak more on the morrow." I followed the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, up the magnificent staircase, my every step feeling a fraud. She led me to a set of double doors and opened them to reveal not a room, but an entire suite of chambers. A fire was already blazing in the hearth of a beautifully appointed sitting-room, and beyond it, I could see a bedroom dominated by a vast four-poster bed draped in silk. Mrs. Gable showed me the bathing-room and informed me that a maid would be along shortly with hot water and towels. Then she left, closing the doors softly behind her, leaving me in a silence more profound than any I had ever known. I walked to the centre of the room and looked around at the silks, the polished wood, the crystal vases. I had a name, a room, and the protection of a duke. All I had to do in return was forget I was Evelyn Hart, the girl from the bakery, and become someone I had never been. I awoke to sunlight, not the thin grey London light I was accustomed to, but a soft, golden light filtering through silk curtains, painting stripes across a room so vast it seemed to belong in a storybook. For a disorienting moment, I did not know where I was. Then the memory of the Duke, the carriage, and the grand house rushed back in a dizzying wave. I was safe. I was an imposter. A young maid whose name I learned was Tilly brought hot water for a bath and laid out a simple but elegant morning gown of soft blue muslin. The crimson dress, the uniform of my shame, was nowhere to be seen. As I bathed in water scented with lavender and dressed in clean, fine clothes for the first time in years, I felt as though I were shedding a skin. When I looked in the mirror, the girl who stared back was a stranger, clean, well-kept, and looking dreadfully out of place. The Duke found me in the sitting-room, staring out the window at the manicured gardens below. He was dressed for the day in a crisp tailcoat and waistcoat, looking every inch the aristocrat. His expression was serious, his tone businesslike. "I have made some arrangements, Miss Hart," he began, maintaining the formal distance between us. "Tutors will begin arriving this afternoon. You will need to be instructed in history, specifically our family's history, as well as French, needlepoint, and deportment. It is essential that you can acquit yourself in society." My head swam. Tutors, deportment. It was a life so beyond my imagining that I could not form a reply. He continued, "My fiancée will likely call upon us today. She is a woman of keen observation. You will be polite, quiet, and allow me to do most of the speaking. It is imperative that she believes the story." Before I could process the word fiancée, the doors to the suite opened and the butler, Jennings, entered. "Your Grace," he announced with a slight bow, "Lady Annalise Beaumont has arrived." The Duke's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Send her in, Jennings." A moment later, she entered, and the air in the room seemed to change. She was, without question, the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Tall and slender, with hair the colour of spun gold, and eyes as blue and cold as a winter sky. She was dressed in a gown of shimmering silk that rustled with every graceful movement. She was a queen, and I was a common sparrow. She glided toward the Duke and offered her cheek for a cool, passionless kiss. "Isaac, darling, I received your note. I simply had to see this mysterious sister of yours for myself." Her gaze then fell upon me, and I felt as if I were being weighed and measured. "Annalise, allow me to present my sister, Lady Evelyn," the Duke said smoothly. "Evelyn, this is my fiancée, Lady Annalise." I managed a small, clumsy curtsy. "A pleasure to meet you, my lady." Lady Annalise's smile did not reach her eyes. "A sister," she mused, her gaze sweeping over my face, my hair, my simple dress. After all this time, how remarkable. One would think there would be more of a family resemblance. The words were polite, but they were a challenge, the first of many tests. "Evelyn takes after our mother," the Duke said, his voice calm. "Of course," Annalise replied, her smile tightening. She turned her piercing gaze back to me. "You must tell me everything. I imagine you must be simply overjoyed to be back at Everard Court after so long away." It was a trap, a clever one. I knew from the address that we were in London, not at a country estate. I froze, my mind blank with panic. The Duke stepped in seamlessly. "Evelyn is still quite overwhelmed, my dear. Her health, as I mentioned, is delicate. We shall remain in London for the season until she is fully recovered." Lady Annalise's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. She looked from the Duke's protective stance to my own terrified silence. She said nothing more, but the look she gave me was one of profound, chilling suspicion. It was a look that said, clear as day, "I do not believe you, and I will find out who you truly are." I had escaped the madam, but I had just met a far more dangerous adversary. The weeks that followed blurred into a routine of intense instruction, which soon stretched into months. Nearly a year had passed since my arrival, and on the cusp of my 24th birthday, I was a different woman. The tutors had done their work. My curtsy was steady, my accent refined, and the girl from the bakery had all but disappeared beneath layers of etiquette and expensive silk. Lady Annalise was a constant, chilling presence. Her visits were polite tortures, each question a carefully laid trap. "Do you remember the summer pony, Evelyn?" she would ask, her eyes glittering. Isaac was so fond of it. I would murmur something about a poor memory, and the Duke would steer the conversation away, a muscle tightening in his jaw. A cold distance grew between him and his fiancée, a chill that had everything to do with me. One afternoon, the Duke's closest friend, a warm and cheerful man named Lord Thomas Maxwell, came to visit. Unlike everyone else, he spoke to me not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a person. He asked me about the book I was reading, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I had a real conversation. I found myself laughing, a genuine, unburdened sound. I glanced across the room and saw the Duke watching us. His friendly expression was gone, replaced by a stillness, a shadow in his eyes that I had never seen before. The warmth of the moment vanished. Later that evening, after Lord Maxwell had departed, the Duke found me in the library. He stood for a moment in silence before speaking, his tone unnervingly casual. "Lord Maxwell was quite taken with you this afternoon," he said. "I think you and he would make a fine couple." He was testing me, though I did not understand the nature of the test. I only knew that his friend had been kind, a rare commodity in my new life. "Do you really think so?" I asked, my response artless and sincere. He was very kind to me. The air grew instantly colder. The Duke's face became an impassive mask, his eyes like chips of ice. It was not the answer he had wanted. "Indeed," was all he said, his voice flat. "Good night, Miss Hart." He turned and walked out, leaving me standing alone amongst the books, my heart sinking with a confusion so profound it felt like a physical ache. I had done something wrong, something that had pushed him away, and for the life of me, I could not understand what it was. For days, a chasm of polite silence lay between us. The Duke was a ghost in his own home, his presence felt but rarely seen. The warmth from his friendship with Lord Maxwell was gone, replaced by the same cold distance he showed his fiancée. I was left utterly alone with my confusion, feeling more like a porcelain doll on a shelf than a person. On the evening of my 24th birthday, I entered the small dining parlour to find the table set for only two. Lady Annalise was for once absent. The Duke stood by the fireplace, a bottle of champagne in his hand. "A small token for the occasion," he said, his voice carefully neutral. He poured 2 glasses. I had never tasted champagne before. The bubbles felt like a strange, glittering courage on my tongue. After 1 glass, the oppressive silence in the room felt unbearable. After 2, my carefully constructed composure began to fray. A year of unspoken gratitude, of quiet admiration, of a desperate, lonely love, churned inside me. I looked at him, at the handsome, noble man who had saved me, and felt an overwhelming need to break through the wall of ice he had built between us. "Why have you been so cold to me, Your Grace?" I asked, my voice bolder than I intended. He looked away from me, toward the fire. "My mood is of no consequence." "It is to me," I insisted, standing up. Fueled by the wine and a year of simmering emotion, I crossed the space between us. Before he could react, before my own sense of propriety could stop me, I reached up, tangled my fingers in the lapels of his coat and kissed him. For a single, breathtaking second, he froze. His body went rigid, and I felt his hand come up to grip my shoulder, his fingers pressing hard into my skin as if he were holding himself back from either pushing me away or pulling me closer. A sharp breath hissed through his teeth. Then the moment was over. He pushed me away, not roughly, but with a firm, heartbreaking finality. His face was pale, his expression anguished. "Don't," he said, his voice low and strained. "Evelyn, we cannot." The shame hit me like a physical blow, hot and sickening. I had offered him everything, the last, most vulnerable piece of myself, and he had refused it. I had misread everything. I was a fool, a drunken, hopeful fool. I didn't say a word. I simply turned and fled the room, my cheeks burning, his quiet, devastating rejection echoing in my ears. I ran up the grand staircase, not stopping until I was safely behind the closed doors of my suite. I leaned against the wood, gasping for breath, and knew with a soul-crushing certainty that I could not stay another day. Sleep did not come. I sat in the darkness of my opulent room, the Duke's rejection echoing in my soul. It was not a choice born of anger, but of a quiet, brutal clarity. I was an actress in a play, and I had forgotten my part. I had mistaken the stage for a home, and my benefactor for something more. I could not stay. Before the first hint of dawn, I rose. I did not pack the beautiful gowns or the fine linen. They were not mine. They belonged to Lady Evelyn, and she was a ghost. I changed back into the simple, worn dress I had arrived in, the one I had kept hidden at the bottom of my wardrobe. It felt like my own skin. I took only my mother's old travel trunk, the one he had rescued along with me. On a piece of heavy cream stationery, I wrote a short, formal note. My hand did not tremble. Your Grace, I am forever in your debt for the kindness you have shown me. I find I can no longer impose upon your generosity. I wish you and Lady Annalise every happiness, a heart. Sleep did not come. I sat in the darkness of my opulent room, the evening's mortifying events playing over and over in my mind. A brutal clarity began to dawn, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled my very soul, that I could not stay. It was not a simple decision, but rather the conclusion of a devastating emotional reckoning. I had been given two undeniable and equally crushing reasons to leave this house. The first, of course, was Lady Annalise. To remain under her constant, scrutinous gaze was a trial my spirit could no longer endure. She made it plain in 1,000 silent ways that I was an unwelcome interloper, a stain upon her perfect world. I could, perhaps, have borne that torment, had it been my only burden. But it was the second reason that was truly my undoing. I had committed a mortal error of sentiment. In a moment of wine-fueled folly, I had grossly overstepped the bounds of our arrangement. I had revealed the foolish depths of my own heart, only to have that vulnerability met with a quiet, devastating refusal. I had mistaken his protection for affection, his generosity for love. The shame of it was a fire in my cheeks that would not cool. To face him in the morning was unthinkable. To remain a guest in the home of a man whose fiancé despised me, and whose own heart I had so completely misjudged, was an impossibility. My imposture was at an end. 5 months passed. I learned that independence had a taste. It tasted of cheap ale, fried onions, and the constant weary ache in my bones. I secured a position as a barmaid at a tavern called the Gilded Fox. I had a small clean room above the kitchens, and the coins I earned were entirely my own. I was no longer a lady-in-waiting, but I was the master of my own small life. I was wiping down a sticky table late one evening when the boisterous noise of the tavern suddenly faded. A hush fell over the room. I looked towards the door, and the wet rag fell from my hand. He stood there, Isaac. He was thinner, and the impeccable ducal composure I knew was gone, replaced by a raw weariness. His eyes scanned the crowd, and when they landed on me, the relief that washed over his face was so profound it was like a physical blow. He walked directly toward me and stopped. "Evelyn," he said, his voice hoarse, "come home." My heart screamed yes, but my pride, still smarting from that night in his dining room, formed the words for me. I wanted him to fight for me, to erase the shame with a grand declaration. I wanted him to beg. "I have a home, Your Grace," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "It is not much, but it is mine." I saw the flicker of pain in his eyes, but he simply nodded, his ducal restraint breaking my heart. He turned and left without another word. I stood frozen, my heart at war with my pride. He had come for me, and I had sent him away. I worked for 4 more hours in a daze of regret. When my shift finally ended, I pushed the tavern door open and stepped out into the damp, cold night, and I stopped dead. He was there, leaning against the wall opposite, bathed in the soft glow of a gaslight. He had been waiting for 4 hours. The sheer, magnificent insanity of it stole my breath. He straightened up as his eyes met mine. He did not command me or approach. He simply waited. I crossed the cobblestones toward him. "You are a duke," I whispered. "You cannot stand on a common street for 4 hours." "I can," he replied, his voice low and serious, "if I am waiting for something I have no intention of losing again." His hands, which I had only ever seen held in formal stillness, clenched and unclenched at his sides, betraying a tension his calm voice concealed. "Walk with me, Evelyn. Please." We walked in silence for a time. Finally, I had to ask the question that had been a splinter in my mind. "And Lady Annalise? Does she know you are here, consorting with a barmaid?" He stopped and turned to face me fully. "There is no Lady Annalise," he said, his voice filled with a profound sadness. "The engagement is over." It has been for months. He explained everything then. How she had given him the ultimatum on the very day I left. How he had ended it without a second thought. For 5 months he had been free. For 5 months he had been searching for me. "I was so worried," he murmured, and he reached out not to hold me, but to gently brush a stray strand of hair from my cheek. His fingers were warm against my cold skin, a touch so tender it made my knees feel weak. "To think of you alone in this city, it has been a torment." I looked at his hand, then back to his face. For the first time, I saw not the Duke of Everard, but only Isaac, a man who had given up his perfect, society-approved future for me. The man, I now realized with a terrifying certainty, who truly wanted me. Before he left me that night on the street, he made a request. "Meet me at the estate tomorrow at noon, for a ride. We have much to speak of." I agreed, my heart too full to do anything else. The next day, I took a carriage to the grand house that had once been my prison and my sanctuary. But as I approached, I sensed something was different. The great house was silent. There were no footmen at the door, no grooms in the drive. I pushed the heavy oak door open and stepped inside. The vast marble hall was empty, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. All the staff, all the life, was gone. It was just a house. I walked through the silent rooms, my hand trailing along the fine furniture, until I passed the library and went out toward the stables. He was there, standing with 2 saddled horses, their breath misting in the cool air. He was not dressed as a duke, but simply as a man, in riding boots and a plain coat. He watched me approach, his expression serious, his gaze so intense, it felt as if he were memorizing my face. "The house is empty," I said, the words sounding small in the open air. "I sent them all to the country estate for the week," he replied. "I wanted no one else here. No titles, no servants, no interruptions, just you and me." He took a step toward me, closing the distance between us. "I came for you at the tavern last night, Evelyn, and you sent me away. I will not make that mistake again." His eyes held mine, and they were filled with a raw, undeniable certainty. "I am not leaving here without you." "Isaac," I began, but he gently shook his head. "Let me speak," he said, his voice thick with a year of unspoken emotion. "I hid behind my duty, behind the lie of calling you my sister, because I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting you, and I was, but I was also protecting myself from the truth, that from the moment I saw you trembling in that crimson dress, you were never my sister. You were a fire in my blood." He took another step, his hands finding mine. "I was a fool. I rejected your kiss on your birthday because of honor, because of a fiancé I did not love, because it was the right thing to do. It was the most regrettable act of my life. I love you, Evelyn Hart. Not Lady Evelyn, the girl I invented, but you, the girl from the bakery, the barmaid from the Gilded Fox, the woman who saved me from my own empty life." Tears were streaming down my face, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of a joy so profound I did not know a heart could hold it. "I thought," I whispered, my voice breaking, "that I had been such a fool to love you." A slow, beautiful smile spread across his face. "Then we shall be fools together," he murmured, and then he kissed me. It was not the chaste blessing on my forehead, nor the drunken, desperate press of my own lips. It was a kiss of homecoming, of 1,000 conversations held in silence, of a love that had survived lies and pride and fear. It was the first day of my real life. He pulled back, his forehead resting against mine. "Come home, Evelyn." This time I did not hesitate. "I already am."
Your gentle glance made the world come alive. I never knew love could feel so near, but in your eyes I lost all I held my distance, I hid the flame. A love restrained, yet it burned the same.
One quiet vow, though I never spoke, for you my heart could never revoke.
If my heart could scream, if my soul could cry, it would call your name across endless skies. Every beat whispers, every breath pleads. You are the answer to all my needs. That kiss on my forehead, so soft, so kind, told me you cared more than anyone in time.
No words were spoken, but I understood. You gave me love no other ever could.
I pulled away, though I longed to stay. I fear the world would take you away.
Yet every silence, every glance I keep confesses the truth my lips can't speak.
If my heart could scream, if my soul could cry, it would call your name across endless skies. Every beat whispers, every breath pleads. You are the answer to all my needs. Nights are long, but your light remains. You steady my soul through joy and pain.
Even in silence, my spirit knows
This endless love still grows and grows. If tomorrow comes, or the world should part, I'll carry you here inside my heart.
though fate is cruel, I'll never let go. You're the only